Welcome to Beyond Beauty, the Professional Beauty Association's podcast, where we take a deeper look into the hearts and minds of amazing artists in our professional beauty industry. I'm your host, Leslie Perry, and today we have a really interesting episode. And I know I have spoken with Joanne, and we kind of laughed about this, Joanne, that sometimes insurance isn't really the sexy side of the industry, but it's a really important part of the industry. So I am so pleased to have with me today Joanne Hammer, who is the program manager for Beauty and Bodywork Insurance. And we are going to get into it today, answering all the questions that come up with insurance, because let's face it, first of all, insurance is really complicated for most of us who aren't working in it on a regular basis. So just starting off, really basic, what is insurance? The point of having insurance as a small business owner, especially.
Sure. And really, insurance is a way to protect you and your business from unexpected, unforeseen, unintentional accidents and lawsuits that may occur due to your business activities. It's truly that simple. It's just like your car insurance. You never intend to get in an accident, but it's there if you need it. So that's an easy way to relate it to something very common.
And why, especially in our industry, do licensed beauty professionals need to have insurance, or why is it so important? Because I think it's not something we talk a lot about necessarily. I think, when I was practicing, I knew I needed to have it, but it was but do I really?
Right. Right. And sometimes, most states require licensed professionals to have it. So that's the easiest answer.
Basic level, you need to have it.
You have to.
You have to have it
to keep your license. But often spa and salon owners who offer booth rentals or suite rentals, they require it of their independent contractors that rent from them and those professionals. But more importantly, accidents happen. And without insurance, a beauty professional can end up not only losing their business, possibly their license, but their livelihood and maybe even their personal assets because of a claim or an accident that happens because of their business. So it really does protect you, your livelihood. And even people that are employed by a spa and salon, they don't always do just work for that salon. They'll do a lot of freelance jobs and pick up things here and there to make some extra money. And the salon's insurance won't cover those activities that aren't done as a part of that employment. So really, everyone in the beauty professional industry needs it because there's coverage everywhere. They need coverage for every activity they do.
And we were talking before, and one question that came up as we were preparing for this from a licensed professional was she was in a salon environment where she was an employee of a salon, but one of her tools was stolen, whether it was potentially another colleague or maybe a client doesn't know what happened. Would the salon, and this is kind of getting into specifics, but is that where you'd need a personal policy, or that the salon policy would cover that, or how would that work?
Perfect. Generally, you're going to need a personal policy to cover that. Your salon's policy, especially as an employee, may cover something in the event the building burns down. They might cover some of your tools and equipment, or something happens to the entire business, the salon itself, where you're employed. But as an independent contractor, the spa and salon doesn't have any obligation to cover any of that for you. So there's a very good chance that they wouldn't under their own policy. And if we could, for just 1 second, to kind of look at the reverse side of that for the spa and salon owners versus the contractors or the employees, often their insurance, as we just said, won't cover those 1099 employees, those independent professionals that rent space from them. But they have clients and other third parties coming into that salon that has that business owner, the spa salon owner's name on it. It's theirs, their business. And if someone's injured while they're on their premises, they're going to get sued in that lawsuit. So they're going to be named in the lawsuit. The business is going to be named in the lawsuit. The independent professional is going to get named in a lawsuit. And so I always suggest that even when spa salon owners, whether they have employees, whether they rent space to independent professionals, that they require each of those people to buy their own insurance and add that spa salon business to that policy as an additional insured. That gives those spa salon owners an extra layer of professional insurance for the people that are providing services on behalf of their business. So then if something does happen, I'm an independent beauty professional and one of my clients is injured, my policy is going to pay for your defense and that claim. And so your insurance doesn't have to step in.
So I also, like in the independent world, I see a lot of times people will say, oh, well, I have to create an LLC, for example, and that protects me. But how is creating that business entity is different than having insurance? And it's sometimes maybe you think, oh, I have my LLC, like I'm good. But
yes, we see that a lot, especially in the small business, the entrepreneurial world. LLC is a legal entity, and it's generally formed sometimes to protect your personal assets, but to essentially to separate the business and its members from the individuals that own that business or LLC, generally for legal and tax purposes. So you go, okay, so legally I'm a separate entity. But that doesn't stop someone from suing you personally, and your legal entity doesn't give you protection from that lawsuit. You might be able to say, oh, that was my business, but that's not always how the legal world works. So what insurance does, it not only protects the LLC and its members or the corporation or S Corp, the individual, but there's also protection for spouses, children, and employees when they are working for or acting on behalf of that business. So, well, I'm not a lawyer, but I do understand the differences, and I do hear people say, I'll just bankrupt my business. Well, that might be bankrupting yourself too and your family. So I always suggest consult a lawyer for legal advice on whether an LLC or an individual sole proprietorship, whatever is the best for you. But an LLC simply doesn't give you the same protections that an insurance policy does. And an LLC isn't going to pay a claim when you are sued.
Along those lines, another question that came up, and I told you that we were talking yesterday with a licensed professional and just really got into some interesting scenarios. And one thing that she asked specifically was, do you recommend, and this might be a legal question, and then you can let me know that too, that we as licensed professionals have our clients sign a waiver? Because often in this industry, we're doing services that there is a potential for a negative outcome, whether it's a chemical peel, whether it's a massive color correction on the hair, lightening hair that maybe doesn't have the healthiest state, and there's a potential for something to go wrong. So what should we do to protect ourselves in those cases?
So I always would recommend a waiver, a client card, so that you know what past reactions customers have and you've got notes on that customer. I think that waivers definitely and client cards can help limit some of your liability, but courts throw waivers out all the time. So yes, I think it's helpful and absolutely beneficial. But again, if you have a waiver or your client cards or whatever, I would always have it written or at least reviewed by a lawyer that's very familiar with the beauty industry.